The evening air was crisp, the faint glow of city lights casting long shadows over the shelter's exterior. Nathan Steele, a 38-year-old tech millionaire, parked his sleek black car outside the modest building. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, he adjusted his tie and exhaled deeply. This visit, a suggestion from his PR team, was supposed to soften his image, a chance to connect with the community and repair his reputation. Inside, the shelter buzzed with activity. Volunteers handed out steaming bowls of soup, children laughed in the corner, and weary families sought refuge from the cold. The warmth and life within the shelter felt worlds apart from Nathan's usual realm of boardrooms and skyscrapers. As he stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor, he felt the weight of eyes on him. But it wasn't the curious gazes of strangers that stopped him, it was her. Seated near the back of the room, holding a newborn swaddled in a faded blanket, was Ava Reed. Her face, once vibrant and full of life, was pale, her expression guarded. "Ava?" Nathan whispered, his voice barely audible. His heart pounded as memories of their whirlwind relationship flooded back, their passionate beginnings, the painful fallout, and the year that had passed since their bitter divorce. Ava's gaze snapped up, her eyes widening in shock. "Nathan," she replied, her voice tinged with disbelief. The noise of the shelter faded into the background as the former couple stared at each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily between them. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with concern. Ava looked away, adjusting the blanket around the baby in her arms. "I could ask you the same thing," she countered, her tone sharp. "This isn't exactly your kind of place." Nathan ignored the jab and gestured toward the baby. "Is that your baby?" Her expression softened, a protective warmth crossing her face as she glanced at the child. "His name is Leo," she said softly. Nathan hesitated. "How old is he?" 2 weeks, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The realization hit Nathan like a freight train. His mind raced, calculating the timeline. "Ava," he began, but she cut him off. "What do you want, Nathan?" she said, her tone a mix of anger and exhaustion. "Why are you here?" I don't know," he admitted. "But seeing you here, like this, I need to know what happened." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. But then she sighed, her shoulders sagging under an invisible weight. "It's a long story," she said, her voice trembling. "And I don't owe you an explanation." "I know you don't," Nathan replied, his voice soft but firm. "But please, Ava. Let me help." Ava hesitated, her grip on Leo tightening as she weighed Nathan's words. The shelter was bustling, yet it felt as though they were in a world of their own. Finally, she nodded toward an empty corner. "Fine. Let's talk." They settled into 2 mismatched chairs near the far wall, Leo cradled in Ava's arms. Nathan leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together, his polished demeanor cracking as concern flickered in his eyes. "A year ago, I thought my life was falling apart," Ava began, her voice low. "But I didn't realize how much worse it could get." Nathan's chest tightened. He remembered their divorce, how the arguments over his long hours and her dreams of a simpler life had driven them apart. But seeing her now, he realized he'd never truly understood the impact of their separation. "When we split, I lost everything," Ava continued, her voice trembling. "The house, the financial support. It was all gone. I tried to find work, but every door seemed to close on me. And when I found out I was pregnant, I knew I couldn't handle it alone." "Why didn't you tell me?" Nathan asked, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you call?" Ava looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Because I didn't think you'd care. You were so busy with your empire, your endless meetings and deals. How could I believe you'd have time for a baby?" Nathan opened his mouth to protest, but he stopped himself. She wasn't wrong. During their marriage, his work had always come first, a fact that had driven a wedge between them. I should have been there, he said quietly. I should have done better. Ava nodded, her expression softening slightly. I tried to make it work. I found odd jobs, stayed with friends when I could. But when Leo was born, everything became harder. The medical bills, the lack of childcare. It was too much. And then, 2 weeks ago, we ended up here. Nathan stared at her, guilt washing over him. I didn't know. I didn't realize how much you were struggling. Ava's laugh was bitter. Of course you didn't. Why would you? You've been living in a penthouse while we've been surviving on scraps. The weight of her words settled over him like a lead blanket. For all his success and wealth, he had failed to notice the cracks forming in the foundation of his personal life. But as he looked at Ava and Leo, something shifted inside him, a determination to make things right. Let me help you, Nathan said, his voice steady. Whatever it takes. I owe you that much. Ava hesitated, her fingers brushing over Leo's tiny hand. You can't fix this with money, Nathan, she said. This isn't just about what we lost. It's about trust, and that's not something you can buy back. Nathan nodded slowly. Then let me earn it. Let me prove that I'm not the man I used to be. Before Ava could respond, a voice interrupted them. Soup's ready. A volunteer called, holding up a tray. Ava glanced at Nathan, then at Leo. We'll talk later, she said, standing and heading toward the line. But as she walked away, Nathan felt a flicker of hope. She hadn't said no. That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. The sight of Ava and Leo, the sound of her voice recounting her struggles, it all replayed in his mind. He had spent years building his fortune, creating a life of luxury, but it felt hollow compared to the connection he had just rediscovered. Grabbing his phone, he began making calls, determined to take the first steps toward helping Ava and Leo find stability. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, Nathan felt like he was fighting for something that truly mattered. The next morning, Nathan returned to the shelter, a sense of purpose propelling him forward. As he stepped inside, the bustling environment of the previous evening had been replaced with a quieter hum of activity. Volunteers sorted donations, children played in a corner, and a few residents sat in quiet conversation. He spotted Ava seated near the back, Leo resting in her arms. The exhaustion on her face was evident, but there was a flicker of relief when she saw him. You're back, she said, her tone neutral but not unkind. Nathan nodded. I told you I wanted to help. And I mean it. They moved to a quieter corner of the shelter, where Nathan placed a folder on the table between them. I made some calls last night, he began, his voice steady but careful. I've arranged for you and Leo to move into a temporary apartment. It's not much, but it's clean, safe, and private. And it's yours for as long as you need. Ava's eyes widened, and she looked at the folder, then back at Nathan. Why are you doing this? She asked. Is it guilt? Or some kind of publicity stunt? Nathan flinched at her words but met her gaze. It's neither, he said honestly. It's about making things right. For you, for Leo. And for myself. I know I've made mistakes, Ava, but I want to fix them. Please, let me. Ava's fingers brushed over the folder as if testing its reality. And after the apartment? What then? I've also arranged childcare for Leo, Nathan continued. So you can focus on finding a job or pursuing whatever you want to do. And I've set up a trust fund for him. It's not to control you, I promise. It's just to ensure he never has to go through what you've been through. Tears welled in Ava's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, her walls still firmly in place. You can't just throw money at this, Nathan. It doesn't erase the past. I know, Nathan said softly. And I'm not trying to erase it. I'm trying to show you that I'm different now. Ava exhaled slowly, her resolve wavering. Leo deserves better, she murmured, her voice breaking. He does, Nathan agreed. And so do you. Later that day, Nathan accompanied Ava and Leo to the apartment he had arranged. It was a modest one-bedroom unit in a safe neighborhood, with clean carpets, fresh paint, and a small crib already set up for Leo. As Ava walked through the space, her expression softened, a faint glimmer of hope flickering in her eyes. "It's nice," she admitted, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. Nathan smiled. "I'm glad you think so." Ava turned to him, cradling Leo in her arms. "This doesn't mean I've forgiven you," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "But thank you. That's all I can ask for," Nathan replied. "A chance to prove myself." Over the next few weeks, Nathan's efforts to support Ava and Leo became a part of his daily life. He accompanied them to doctor's appointments, helped Ava update her resume, and even spent evenings babysitting Leo so Ava could attend job interviews. Despite her initial reservations, Ava found herself relying on Nathan more than she had expected. One evening, as Nathan rocked Leo to sleep in the small living room, Ava watched from the doorway. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to see the man she had once loved, the man she had believed in before their world fell apart. "Thank you," she said softly, breaking the silence. Nathan looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For trying," Ava replied, her voice trembling. "For showing me that maybe you can change." But just as their fragile bond began to mend, a complication arose, one that threatened to undo all the progress they had made. As weeks turned into months, Ava and Nathan found a tentative rhythm. The apartment became a safe haven, and Nathan's consistent presence began to ease Ava's doubts. But the closer they grew, the more questions arose, questions Ava wasn't sure she wanted to answer. One evening, as they sat in the living room after putting Leo to bed, Nathan hesitated before speaking. "Ava," he began, his voice cautious, "why didn't you tell me about Leo sooner? I mean, even after we divorced, you could have reached out." Ava tensed, her hands twisting in her lap. "Because I didn't think you cared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "All I ever saw was your work, your ambition. I felt like I didn't matter, and when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't want Leo to feel like that, too." Nathan's chest tightened, guilt washing over him. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you," he said softly. "But I want to do better for both of you." Ava looked away, her defenses rising. "It's not that simple, Nathan. People don't just change overnight." As their conversation lingered in the air, Ava's phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up, her brow furrowing as she read the message. It was from a former co-worker, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. "What's wrong?" Nathan asked. Noticing her expression, Ava hesitated. "It's nothing," she said quickly, but the tension in her voice betrayed her. Nathan didn't press further, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The following week, while Nathan was helping Ava assemble a new crib for Leo, she received another text from the same number. This time, the message was clear: "You should be careful who you trust. Not everyone has changed as much as they claim." Ava's heart raced as she stared at the screen. The timing of the message felt too deliberate, too targeted. Was someone trying to warn her about Nathan? Or was it something else entirely? She glanced at Nathan, who was focused on tightening a screw. His sincerity over the past few months had seemed genuine, but doubt crept in, casting a shadow over her thoughts. That evening, after Nathan left, Ava dug deeper. She searched the sender's number, hoping to uncover its origin, but the trail led nowhere. Frustrated and anxious, she decided to confront Nathan the next day. When he arrived in the morning, his usual smile faltered at the sight of her tense expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, his concern evident. Ava held up her phone, the messages glaring on the screen. "Do you know anything about this?" she demanded. Nathan's brows knitted in confusion. "No. Who sent these?" "I don't know," Ava admitted. "But they're making me question everything." Nathan's expression darkened. "Ava, I swear I don't know who's behind this. But if someone's trying to scare you, we'll find out who." Despite his reassurance, the doubt lingered. Ava couldn't shake the feeling that someone was trying to warn her, and she couldn't ignore the possibility that Nathan might be keeping secrets. A few days later, while Nathan was at work, Ava received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was low and urgent. "You don't know the whole story," the caller said. "Nathan Steele isn't who you think he is." Before Ava could respond, the line went dead. The call left Ava reeling. She spent the night combing through old memories, piecing together fragments of their past. She wanted to believe in Nathan's sincerity, but the whispers of doubt were growing louder. When Nathan arrived the next morning, Ava confronted him again. "Who would want to send me messages like this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Why would someone say you're not who you seem?" Nathan's expression was a mix of frustration and hurt. "I don't know, Ava. But I do know that I've spent the past few months trying to earn your trust. Doesn't that count for something?" Ava's shoulders sagged, her emotions warring within her. "It does," she said softly. "But I need answers, Nathan. I can't keep second-guessing everything." As their conversation ended in uneasy silence, Nathan made a silent vow. Whoever was trying to sabotage the fragile bond they were rebuilding, he wouldn't let them succeed. But the question remained, who was behind it, and what were they trying to achieve? The tension between Nathan and Ava reached a breaking point. The cryptic messages and the unknown caller weighed heavily on Ava, while Nathan was determined to prove his sincerity. The two decided to work together, piecing together clues that might lead them to the truth. One evening, as Leo slept soundly in his crib, Nathan brought over his laptop. "I've asked a private investigator to help trace the messages," he said. "If someone's targeting you or us, they'll find out who." Ava nodded, though the unease in her chest remained. "Why would anyone want to target us? We're not together." Nathan paused, meeting her gaze. "But we are connected. Through Leo, through everything we've been through. And maybe that's enough for someone to try to drive a wedge between us." Ava exhaled, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "I just want to protect Leo. That's all I care about." "I know," Nathan said softly. "And so do I." The investigators' findings arrived 2 days later. The messages had come from a burner phone, untraceable to any specific person. However, the timing of the calls and texts aligned suspiciously with Nathan's appearances at the shelter and the apartment. "Someone's been watching us," Nathan said grimly, reading the report. "They've been waiting for the right moment to stir up doubt." "But who?" Ava asked, her voice trembling. "And why?" The answer came unexpectedly. That afternoon, while Ava was out running errands, a woman approached her at the grocery store. She was tall, with dark hair and a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through Ava. "You must be Ava," the woman said, her tone cold. "I'm Jessica, Nathan's former fiancée." Ava's stomach churned at the introduction. "Former fiancée?" she repeated, her voice laced with confusion. Jessica's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Nathan and I were together for years. But he left me for his work, just like he left you." Ava's pulse quickened. "What do you want?" "I want you to know the truth," Jessica said, her voice sharp. "Nathan only comes back when it's convenient for him. He did it to me, and he's doing it to you now." Ava's hands tightened around the shopping cart. "You don't know him anymore, don't I?" Jessica countered, her eyes narrowing. "He doesn't change, Ava. Men like him never do." The conversation left Ava shaken. When she returned to the apartment, she found Nathan playing with Leo on the floor, the sight momentarily easing her tension. But Jessica's words echoed in her mind, planting seeds of doubt she couldn't ignore. "I ran into someone today," Ava said, her voice carefully neutral. "Jessica." Nathan's expression hardened. "Jessica? What did she say?" "She said you left her for your work," Ava replied. "That you only come back when it's convenient." Nathan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Jessica and we didn't end well. She wanted a life I couldn't give her. But she's wrong about one thing, I'm not the same man I was back then. Ava folded her arms, her voice trembling. How do I know that? How do I know you won't leave again when things get hard? Nathan stood, his gaze steady. Because I've already lost you once, Ava. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure it doesn't happen again. The sincerity in his voice caught Ava off guard, but the doubt remained. That night, as she lay awake, she thought about the man Nathan had been during their marriage, the man who had prioritized his career over their relationship. But then she thought about the Nathan she had seen over the past few months, the man who had stayed by her side, who had worked tirelessly to rebuild her trust. Was it possible that people could change? Could Nathan truly be different? The next morning, Ava decided to confront Jessica directly. She met her at a cafe, determined to get answers. Why are you doing this? Ava asked, her tone firm. What do you gain from tearing Nathan down? Jessica's bitter smile returned. I just wanted you to know what you're dealing with. Men like Nathan. They'll always choose themselves in the end. But what if you're wrong? Ava countered, surprising even herself with the conviction in her voice. What if he's changed? Jessica's expression faltered for a moment before she leaned back in her chair. Then I guess you'll find out, won't you? That evening, Ava told Nathan about the meeting. I don't know if I can trust you yet, she admitted. But I want to believe you. Nathan took her hands in his voice steady. Then let me keep proving it to you. For as long as it takes. Ava nodded, the walls around her heart beginning to crack. Okay, she said softly. But no more secrets. None, Nathan promised. As they faced the challenges ahead, Ava realized that the path to rebuilding trust wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, she felt that it might be possible. The weeks that followed were a delicate balancing act, but for the first time in years, Ava began to feel a sense of stability. With Nathan's consistent presence and unwavering efforts, her doubts started to ease. Though trust wasn't fully restored, the foundations of something new were beginning to take shape. Nathan, true to his word, continued to prove his dedication. He showed up for Leo's doctor appointments, helped Ava secure a job at a local nonprofit, and even accompanied her to childcare drop-offs and pickups. Slowly but surely, the pieces of Ava's life began to fall into place. One evening, as they sat together after putting Leo to bed, Ava looked at Nathan, her voice hesitant. Why are you doing all of this? You could have walked away after the divorce. Why come back now? Nathan leaned forward, his gaze steady. Because I realized what I lost, Ava. And I know I can't undo the past, but I can try to make up for it. For you, for Leo. For us. Ava's heart ached at his words. She had spent so long building walls around herself, protecting her son and her own fragile hope. But now, for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine the possibility of something better. I don't know if I can ever forgive you completely, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I think. I want to try. Nathan smiled softly, his relief palpable. That's all I've been hoping for. As the months passed, Nathan and Ava fell into a rhythm that felt natural. They co-parented seamlessly, working together to create a stable and loving environment for Leo. Though their relationship remained undefined, the connection between them deepened with every shared moment. One sunny afternoon, while playing with Leo in the park, Nathan turned to Ava, his voice filled with emotion. You know, I never thought I'd have a chance to be a real father. To be part of a family again. Ava smiled, watching Leo toddle toward a group of children. I never thought I'd feel safe again, she admitted. But you've changed that. Nathan hesitated, then reached for her hand. I know I've made mistakes, Ava. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you need, whatever Leo needs, I'll be here. Ava met his gaze, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Maybe Maybe it's time to stop looking back, she said softly, and start looking forward. Nathan nodded, his grip on her hand tightening slightly. Together. Together, Ava agreed, a sense of peace washing over her. Over time, the whispers of doubt that had once plagued Ava began to fade. Nathan's actions spoke louder than his words ever could. And she saw in him the man she had once fallen in love with, a man who had learned from his mistakes and was determined to be better. Years later, at Leo's 5th birthday party, surrounded by friends and family, Nathan and Ava watched their son blow out his candles with a mix of pride and joy. As they stood side by side, Ava reached for Nathan's hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible over the laughter and cheers. "For everything." Nathan turned to her, his smile warm and genuine. "No," he replied. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." As the celebration continued, Ava and Nathan realized that their journey, though fraught with challenges, had brought them to a place of hope, love, and new beginnings. Together, they had rebuilt not just their lives but the foundation of a family that would stand the test of time.